by doing those things. So just keep that in mind as you're going through. All right, getting into medical school. What are the reasons most applicants don't get into medical school? Right now, each year, about half of the applicants never get into medical school, and that's kind of scary. I would think that the percentages for this group are probably going to be way better than 50%. The fact that you're here means you're probably paying more attention to trying to do the right things to get yourself there than a lot of students out there. The fact that you're at USC is a big help. The fact you're at USC in this state, applying to medical schools in this state, big step up. One of the biggest reasons, 7 points I want to touch on here. One of the big problems that people have is that when they're applying, their list of schools is too narrow. How many schools are you guys told you should apply to?
14. 14 grand debt.
It's work, time to do that. It's a pain in the ass. But if you apply to Duke, Stanford, and Harvard, and that's it, that's probably not going to work out real well for most people. You need to, I would encourage you to apply to a place that you don't think you can get into, just to see how you do. But you also need to have a backup plan, a school that you think, yeah, this is my safety net, and spend the time to do that too. Okay, reason number 2, lacking clinical experience. We didn't have to spend, when I was doing this, we didn't have to spend time shadowing. God, George sends me students all the time now to shadow and set up. I've got your dad to help get kids into shadow. How many hours are they telling you should spend shadowing before you apply? I've heard ridiculous numbers. I've heard 100 hours. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do they want you to do that?
Make sure you know that's what you want to do.
Yeah, before they commit the resources and time and give up a valuable slot in a class, you want to make sure you know what the heck you're getting into. You don't want to get there and spend the money and incur the debt and then not be happy with it. So I think it's a good thing that you're doing. It's real easy if you've got a family member that's a physician or you've got a close relationship with somebody that's a physician. If you don't, it's a lot harder to do that. And that's usually who George is sending to me, people that don't have any experience.
With that, do you think it's more important to log multiple hours and like have a commitment with one person? I mean, obviously you want more than one, but do you think staying with one person or just logging hours just across the board with different specialties?
I think you should see as many different things as you can. So you've got exposures to things that you never even imagined before. If somebody is willing to get you into a practice setting or first of all, if you go to the ER and spend some time in the ER, you'll see lots of different things. If you get a general surgeon, OBGYN, and anesthesiologist to get you into the operating room, to me, a wonderful way to do it is to go to the OR and hang out with one of the anesthesiologists, and you pop into different ORs and see all kinds of different things. But I think if you go in, you have a broader experience. The purpose of that is to, one, help you, but when you finally get in and get your interview, you want to be able to talk about what you've seen and how it's affected you. And if you have seen your pediatrician and what they do there and that's it, then you need to see them. Okay. All right, third thing, submitting poorly written applications, personal statements. Most of the people applying to medical school are more science-minded, science brains, not necessarily the best writers for nice, flowery, talking about yourself kind of stuff. With the personal statement, you got to sell yourself. This is your chance, okay? The admissions committees are seeing all these applications with everybody who's got the right MCAT score, and everybody that's got the right GPA, and everybody who had some experience that made them decide they wanted to serve people, and you gotta set yourself apart with your personal statement somehow. You've got to, nobody else is going to be bragging about it. You know, if you've done things that makes you a better applicant than somebody else in this room, you got to tell them. Write it, rewrite it. Have people you know and trust read it. Have people that are good writers, whether they know anything about med school science, good writers review it for you. Give a draft. It doesn't matter where you are in writing your personal statement. If you're asking someone to write a letter for you, give a draft of your personal statement to the person that you want to write a letter for you. They need to know you. They need to know every good thing they can about you so they can write the best letter for you. Addendums. You guys know about the addendum you can add to your application? Right, if you've got an extenuating circumstance, if you had an illness, if you had your parents divorced, your roommate committed suicide, something happened along the way, and you had a bad semester, and your grades tanked that semester. It's not like they're not going to notice that when they review your application. They're going to look at it and wonder what's going on. You need to own it, take responsibility for it. Say why it happened, what you've done, how you learned from it, and why it's not going to happen again. Because they don't want to see a bad dip in grades and think, well, what are they going to do in med school when they get to a stressful point? And how are they going to handle that? You don't have anything that's negative like that that's sitting out there, okay? What else? If you have a brush with the law at some point, at some point along the way, they're going to do a background check. This is one of my son's friends who's in medical school now. This is a kid who had a 4.0, honors college 4.0, double major, incredible MCAT score, personable, outgoing. He was a lot for medical school. There's no question he wasn't going to get in. Some friends' parents were in one weekend, took all the guys out. They had a limo, so there was no drinking and driving. They get back to the apartment to run in, and the guys are rushing in to get to the bathroom. Well, the last ones here are still dying to go to the bathroom. So they go to the tree outside, and there are cops sitting in the parking lot watching this happen, arrested and taken away. So he's applying to medical school when all this is happening, totally panicking. You know, if you have an indecent exposure on your record and you're trying to get into medical school, that's not going to work real well. Fortunately, he didn't have to make an addendum about that. Got an attorney to help him with that, and everything was dismissed. But if you've got anything out there that isn't gone from your record, own it, take responsibility for it. Don't whine about it, but tell them how you learned and grew from that, and how that won't ever happen again. And be prepared for that on your interview, because it'll come up. Okay, 4, lackluster academic record. Right, you guys know this. Most schools are not going to look past, if you don't have a GPA at a certain point, probably about a 3.5, MCAT of about 30. Those are most places cutoffs. You're not going to even get a second look. They're not going to look at all the other things. If you've got a GPA of 3.4, you've got a great MCAT score, yeah, that'll probably offset that, and vice versa. But unfortunately, they're starting off with, they're trying to compare apples to oranges of so many things, and the MCAT score is what's going to allow them to do that. Right? So if once you get above that, or if you're close to that, you know, that's behind you. Coming from USC, academic rigor should not be an issue. Choice of majors. George, how much do you think that really has an impact?
Choice of majors?
Yeah.
Chemistry and engineers seem to do better on the MCAT.
to me, and I told my son this when he was looking at trying to decide what he was going to do. I said, well, you know, the chemical engineers, I thought, worked harder than anybody and had the toughest major. Of course, he had to do that to try to one up me. I was a chemistry major. But yeah, I do think that makes a difference. If you're from a really good academic institution, you're an English major. It doesn't really matter. One of the brightest guys in my class from med school was an English major from UVA. But you need to look at filling holes. If you've got any holes in your schedule, you guys, most of you have plenty of time to do this. It's very tempting to take fun classes, but if your grades are not where they need to be, you need to be taking tougher classes. Is that fair to say? Right, 5, submitting a late application. Okay, easy to fix this, but why is that one important? Is it June 1st roughly when the AMCAS is they first start accepting them? All right, so then it takes 6 to 8 weeks to probably process all the things that are coming in. If you're on the early end of this, if you're on the early wave, there are this many slots available at the schools you're applying to, okay? Once they start accepting people, the slots go down. So if your application is getting in when the slots are like this, or when there are this many left, a lot harder to get those last few spots. It's a lot easier to convince somebody with your record and an interview that you deserve one of those spots when there are a bunch of them left. So the earlier you apply, the better.
How does it work if you've already completed grad school? Because I know you can't put those grades into like a house or whatever.
I'm sorry, I can hear you.
How does it work if you've already completed grad school? Like if they've gone through grad school? Because you can't put those grades into MCAS, so you just not talk about that, or do you?
No, you do talk about that. And that's one of the things that you do too with, when I was talking about an addendum. If you have done something, if there's been any gap in your education, tell them what you did with the time. If you've been in grad school, something that may have been totally related to going to medical school, totally unrelated to that, include that in the addendum as well. I don't think there's any way that grad school will do anything to help you if you did well in whatever field. Bad letters of recommendation. Had, one of the nurse anesthetists that I worked at Lexington, her son was applying, and he was way late in the ball game with things and had still not been admitted. She asked me if I would look at his resume, look at his application, try to see what's going on. The kid had like a 3.8 something. He had a great MCAT score. On paper, looked perfect. I offered to do a mock interview for him, and he came in to sit down and talk with me. First of all, didn't interview well. He was nervous as he could be. He was anxious. And here I am, somebody who's just coming to help him out. He could barely get a word out. And we talked about his letters, because he had not gotten interviewed, so I knew it wasn't the interviewing skills. He hadn't gotten interviews yet. Asked him about his letters of recommendation, and he'd never seen them. He said, oh, we're told that we should just have them send the letters in blind. I asked him to trash the letters that he had, start over, and the next year he got interviews, he was accepted, he's in medical school doing very well right now. He graduates next year. He had a letter that was bad. Don't know what was said, but he never read them, never saw them. He had to have a bad letter because nothing else changed. I think one thing that George said earlier about this, he asked somebody, will you write me a good letter? That's not the question. Will you write me a great letter? Because everybody applying is going to have good letters. Right? I want to get into medical school. I need you to write me a great letter. And if they can't look you in the eye and say, oh yeah, I got you. If you don't know that, then you better see the letter before it gets turned in. You may disagree with that one. What do you think about blind letters and knowing what's in them?
Good idea. It's a good idea. See, privy to seeing the letter, but I don't know if people would agree doing that. There was a time when Ms. Copina and I used to do interviews, and she would advise students leave out certain letters that she thought were bad and get someone else as a replacement, so to speak. I don't think she does that anymore.
Actually, that's a problem.
That is a problem, yeah.
You need to either have an advisor that's seen your letters, somebody you can trust, or you need to see your letters.
I know with my personal recommenders, they a lot of them offer. They're like, hey, do you want to see this before I submit? So I feel like if you have that close relationship with your recommenders, sometimes they'll ask you like, hey, do you want to look over this to make sure this is what you want me to say?
Right. And don't feel bad about saying, yeah, I'd like to see it. I'd love to see it. Right. This is a huge thing for you, and I don't think there's anything wrong. You don't have to use that letter if it's not what you want to do. Right, you've got to make it easy for the person writing the letter. Okay, you need to give them your CV, give them your transcripts, draft your personal statement, ask them early. Dr. Hendy said, ask 2-3 months ahead. Make sure you're asking them early. They're busy. They have so many students. If it's a professor that you've identified as being someone that would write a good letter, everybody else has to. Okay? And just because you made an A in someone's class doesn't mean you've earned a good letter. Okay? It's a favor. If they're writing a letter for you, it's a huge favor. It's probably somebody that wants to see you be successful, somebody who has devoted their life to teaching and wants to see you do well. Okay? But it's still a huge favor, and it takes time to do a good letter. So give them plenty of time, help them do it, get to know them. I don't think when we started off with that class, when he was, as he likes to say, babysitting me, that it was, that I was doing that because I was trying to get a good letter, but it actually, he kind of fell into it. I got to know him very well. And, you know, I probably would have gotten into medical school on the letter you wrote alone at that point. Probably. Thank God. Thank you, by the way.
We've known each other for about 3 years, and you have done so many things which an average student doesn't do, or didn't have the skills that you have, leadership skills and organizational skills.
Well, but the thing is, because I'd worked with him that much, he knew those things about me. If I had hopped in his class and then gone and done this elsewhere and done this elsewhere and hadn't gotten to know him, he wouldn't have been able to write that letter.
You actually declined to work with the president and chose to work with us, right? Chemistry department?
Yeah.
I think you had something.
Yeah, I did. I ended up working there after I was accepted to medical school. Spring semester senior year and that summer before starting. But I declined that before because I guess he guilted me into it. I don't know. But I enjoyed doing that. It was fun, and you gave me responsibilities that I wouldn't have gotten elsewhere. Okay, number 7, demonstrating core interview skills. When you finally get your interview, you're there. You've got to understand going in that the people that are interviewing you are not there to judge you. It's not an exam. They're trying to figure out, okay, has this person got the skills? Has this person got what I want? I'm trying to pick good people to be in this medical school. We've got a few slots left. I want to make sure we're doing a good job with this. Everybody that's interviewing you there wants you to be that person. Nobody wants you to come in and not be successful. So when you go into it, this is your chance to sit down, be relaxed, talk to them, and if you can do some mock interviews before, you've got to be comfortable talking about yourself and selling yourself. Most of us aren't real good at that. So would encourage you to do some mock interviews. I don't know if there's something that AED does like that, but if not, if you guys could set up a mock interview type thing. I'm sure you've got faculty members that would be willing to do that. Wow, that would be so helpful. Oh yeah, practice talking about yourself and the evolution of your interest in medicine, right? Because everybody's got a story about why they want to do this. You got to be comfortable telling the story in a way that's going to be not the same thing they've heard from everybody else. You know, you're not telling a lie, you're not believing a story that's not true, but you want it to be interesting. So practice that, spend time with that. Okay. The other things I mentioned at the beginning of this, minimizing debt. I was looking at some numbers last night about the average person in medical school now and how much debt they've got. It's crazy. Trying to find this.
Dr. Estes, while you were trying to find out, we have a few minutes left, so I just want to give you a little time to do
Okay.
so you know what
The mean debt right now for public schools, class of 2014, finishing medical school, the mean debt is $170,000. The cost of the first year of medical school this year, and this is not just tuition, but cost of attendance. For public schools, it's $56,000 this year. For private schools, it's $76,000. Median four-year cost of attendance for a class of 2015, public schools $226,000, private schools $298,000. $300,000. You got to somehow be able to retire that debt. That's crazy. So, how are you going to do that? And then live life and have some quality of life. It doesn't have to be that much money, but that's what's out there. First thing, I'm a big fan of public schools. I cannot comprehend why somebody would, unless that's the only place they get in, why they would decide, I'm going to go and spend a buttload more money. When you get to the end of your, say, end of your education, when you get through medical school residency, and you're either in an academic setting teaching or in practice, they're not going to really care too much where you went to undergrad at that point. You're not going to care a whole lot about where you went to medical school unless you're in academic medicine. They'll care a whole heck of a lot more where you did your residency. And if you go to a decent medical school in this country and do well, you're going to get into a good residency program. If you don't do well, you're not. So don't. I remember when I was first looking at medical schools, I was set that I wanted to go to Emory or Duke. And the reality was I couldn't afford it. And I was looking at going into the military to be able to pay for things. And my dad would not hear of it. He said, then you'll have to go where they want you to go and specialize in what they want you to specialize in. I think it's different now. I think you got better opportunities with that. But fortunately, I did not have to go into debt to get through medical school. Most people aren't that lucky. But if you're going to do